the first video I ever did, really, the storytelling video on the formula, the format that we do it in, is a video about my wife's aunt. She had been davening for a soldier, and after a couple of months, she was going to Israel. She didn't know whether he was still alive or not. There was a hotline you called to daven for the IBF soldiers. You got a name, and you didn't know much more about them. So she had his name always on the cabinet door, on her fridge or whatever in the pantry. And she would always daven for him. And then when she went to Israel, she had no idea where he was, if he was still alive or not. She goes to this restaurant in Herzliya, and lo and behold, the waiter introduces himself as Barak. And she says, "Is your mom's name Orna?" And the guy almost dropped he was like, "Well, how do you know?" It's like, "Well, your name is on my cabinet." And I was really moved, and they connected ever since. I was very moved by the story, and I put it out. And I remember when we put it out, it was like 6-7 years ago. It was before Rosh Hashanah, and within, I would say, 36 hours, it received 100,000 views. It was it went totally viral, and I realized that I'm onto something. I felt that there was a need, and I'll just do it again and again.
And welcome to another episode of Kollel. This is your host, Rabbi Hillel Kappenstein, director of the Columbus Community Kollel, and it's a great honor and privilege to bring all of you to our next episode featuring Rabbi Yoel Gold. Rabbi Gold, thank you so much for joining the program.
I'm so glad to be on. Thanks for having me, Rabbi Hillel.
Of course. So let's start with our first segment, the beginning. I know that you grew up being called Yaeli. Today you're Rabbi Yoel. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and some of the defining moments that help shape who you are today?
Very interesting. Yes, of course. When you say I used to be Yoeli and now I'm Yoel, so based on how somebody calls me, especially those who really know me, I know whether I'm in trouble or not.
Huh.
So if they say Yoeli or Yoelish, I know, okay, I'm in good graces with my wife. But if it's Yoel, then not so simple. But anyway, so I grew up in Williamsburg. My first language was Yiddish. I only spoke Yiddish until I was 13 or 14 years old. That was my main, in Yiddish, we call it Mamelution. My parents' house. And then my parents went through a divorce, so my mom moved to Flatbush, and she changed her lifestyle, and we went along with it pretty much, and she became more modern Orthodox. So I always joke, when I moved to LA, I became a rabbi of an Hungarian shul, and I learned the Litvish yeshiva. So I always joke that God prepared me for this really early. I can speak to the Hasidim, I can speak to the Litvaks, I can speak to the Hungarians, and I can speak to the Sephardim because I married a Sephardi too.
Wow.
So yeah. So I grew up in Williamsburg, and we moved to Flatbush when I was around 11 or 12, and then my life took a turn. People sometimes ask me, like, did you ever realize that this is what you're going to be doing with your life back then, or at what point did you realize that I'm going to produce and facilitate stories on such a large scale? And the truth is, I never did, and it's found me, and we'll get there.
And who were some of your rebbeim, your mentors, the people that had the biggest impact on your life?
So, it really takes a village. It really does take a village to raise someone. And whenever you see anybody who is successful in any area, and I'm not calling myself successful, I'm just saying that somebody who grows up and is doing what he's supposed to be doing, it takes a village. And I have so many people. What's really interesting is I give a daf yomi shir. I give a daf yomi shir every night in the community. And recently, a fellow reached out to me on email and said to me, "Please call me on this number." I call him, and he starts playing Jewish geography with me. And he says, "Do you know Meir Gold?" I says, "Yeah, that's my brother." "Do you know Leda Gold, my sister?" And if I says, do you know anyone that's related to you that learned in Chasdei Torah, like in Borough Park or Belabel Cats? I said, well, I don't know any. That was me. I learned there. And he almost dropped the phone. He says, I don't know if you remember, but I was your Rebbe.
Wow.
And I remember that you were going through a hard time. Um, and I really cared about you. And so, as he's talking to me about this, like the memories flood back. And he was so moved. He said, I can't believe I'm listening to your Daf Yomi this year 30 years later every night. And it's you. So, even that person, who doesn't want to name mentioned. So there's a lot of people, but obviously everybody's got one or two people who really shaped them. And uh, for me, it was when I went to Adelphia, when I transitioned from the Hasidic lifestyle, and really, I didn't know where to go, what to do. I was at a crossroads. My father is still Hasidic. He wears a shtreimel. He speaks Yiddish and a broken English. And my mother is completely modern Orthodox. She's a professional. She's become a stenographer ever since. And here we are. We're like, I'm one of five. And what are we what are we going to do? Which road do we take? And that's when we heard about Adelphia Yeshiva and Rabbi David Trink
Yeah,
and Rabbi
sure.
Rucham Shane. My Rebbeim, Rabbi Rucham Shane, Rabbi David Trink, who really became parents to me in every sense. Um, we'd always joke that Rabbi Trink was the mother and Rabbi Shane was the father.
Uh-huh.
That was the feeling. And I was there for 5 years, and I grew very attached to the place and to these two Rebbeim who treated me like a child. And I did a documentary after Rabbi Trink passed away on his life and his impact on me, and many, many people were moved and there's a book by Art Scroll, Just the Art, and by Surly Besser, a great book.
Yeah.
Uh, it- you know, it, a lot to say about him, but
Mm.
a lot to learn from him too.
Yeah, I remember Rabbi Trink well from my summers in Camp Monk, and just to see the energy, whether it was Taya Meha Friday afternoon or whenever a big Rosh Yeshiva came, and how he would just walk up and down the roads, just how much simcha, how much happiness he brought. Is there like a particular memory or story that you would like to share?
I remember there's so much about his greatness. One of my favorite stories is it was after I left Adelphia. I was living in Lakewood. And I saw him one day on the street. Maybe it was Clifton Avenue, wherever I saw him. He was across the street. I was walking. I didn't even notice him, but he yelled out at me in his characteristic yell, Yoel, yelling. He was so excited to see me. Gave me the biggest hug. Rebbe, how are you? And we talked a couple of minutes. Then he said, do you know where this and this guy's wedding is tonight? Um, so I said, yes, I think it's Nater Sabram. And this guy that he was asking about, I remembered him from Yeshiva. I didn't keep up with him, but Rabbi Trink, of course, kept up with everybody.
Right.
So he said, okay, great. I'm going to go to Nater Sabram. The next day, I was talking to a different friend who was at the wedding, and I found out it was in the atrium in Muncie. So I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I hope that Rabbi Trink figured it out after I told him it was Nater Savram, which is a good hour and a half from the atrium. And depends if it's rush hour, it could be 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I figured I didn't get a call back from Rabbi Trink. I didn't hear from him. I'm assuming he figured it out. I remember 2 months later, I bumped into him again. And as we started talking, I remembered that I told him at Terrace of Rome. I never followed up to find out the rest of the story. I said, Rebbe, did you actually go to Terrace of Rome that night? And he was quiet. He grabbed my hand and he said, Yoeli, from Sheshis he made Bereshis, from the time Hashem created the world, he decreed that Dave Trink should have to sit 3 hours in traffic in rush hour and walk into a wedding where he knew nobody and then drive back to Lakewood and miss that wedding. It has nothing to do with you. You were just a catalyst for a decree that was decreed thousands of years earlier. And I always say that that's how Rabbi Trink taught. There were no lectures. There was no, he was excited and passionate. He always gave over his messages with every fiber of his being. But the real lessons came when you watched him. You watched him with his wife, when I watched how they interacted, and when I watched just how he responded in his tremendous care, tremendous art, which I have many stories about personally with me. And what do they say? they say, was it Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, um, "Who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying."
Ooh,
A lot of times,
powerful.
yeah, yeah. So a lot of times, we try to give speeches, we try to give lectures, but in the end of the day, it's those gestures um, that happen when you think nobody's watching. That's what leaves the biggest impact.
Wow, that's amazing. And what led you into the world of chinuch?
Um, it was just a natural transition from yeshiva and kollel. I went to Jerusalem kollel, Yitzchak Berkowitz's kollel, when my wife and I got married, and we lived in Eretz Yisrael. And they make a stipulation. They stipulate with you. They make a condition that if you're here, you get smicha in 3 years. You got to go out and do kiruv.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we did. I was there for actually 4 or 5 years. And in the end, I went to England, Manchester, England. That's where we lived. I worked with Naftali Schiff and Daniel Rowe at the time, Shlomo Farhi, all these
Oh, brilliant.
superstars who started off in HUK. And and I think after 2 years, my wife said she misses the sun, and you know, she'd like to go back to LA. And that's when we moved back here. And it was just, again, a natural transition to go teach. And I was a rabbi here for a couple of years of a shul, teaching a high school. And then I started doing these videos, stories. I had a natural affinity to stories and telling the story. So I had one of my students in class one day said to me, "Rebbe, why didn't you put out a Tisha B'Av film? Take all the stories that you anyways producing and put it into a Tisha B'Av film." And I said, "Shlomo, that's a great idea."
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is history.
Wow. Yeah, well, that actually is a great segue. Your shift into inspirational storytelling through Hashkifa was definitely game changing. So, I mean, that's just how it started. Someone telling you should just do a video. Was there anything else that played a role?
Well, I had started doing, he told me to do a Tisha B'Av film, but I already started doing videos before that. The first video I ever did, really, uh, the storytelling video and the formula, the format that we do it in, is a video about my wife's aunt. She had been davening for a soldier, and after a couple of months, she was going to Israel. She didn't know whether he was still alive or not. There was a hotline you called to daven for the IBF soldiers. You got a name, and you didn't know much more about them. So she had his name always on the cabinet door, on her fridge or whatever in the pantry, and she would always daven for him. And then when she went to Israel, she had no idea where he was, if he was still alive or not. She goes to this restaurant in Herzliya, and lo and behold, the waiter introduces himself as Barak, and she says, "Is your mom's name Orna?" And the guy almost dropped he was like, "Well, how do you know?" It's like, "Well, your name is on my cabinet." And I was really moved, and they connected ever since. I was very moved by the story, and I put it out. And I remember when we put it out, it was like 6, 7 years ago. It was before Rosh Hashanah, and within, I would say, 36 hours, it received 100,000 views. It was it went totally viral, and I realized that I'm onto something. I felt that there was a need, and I'll just do it again and again, and that was it. That was the first one.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and just thinking about from the classroom to the studio, do you miss like that kesher, talmidim, seeing them grow, their challenges, their struggles, their ups and downs versus like the video where, I mean, the outside just looks at it like, whoa, this thing's amazing. Little do they know the traveling and then the editing. But do you kind of miss that one-on-one part of chinuch?
That's a great question. Um, I I do miss some of it, but um, after a while, as I started doing the videos, I um, I felt that it was dishonest of me to continue teaching in a classroom because somebody once said, if you're 99% in, you're 100% out,
Oh,
which means that whatever you do, you got to go all in. And that's true,
mhm,
especially with chinuch, especially with
mhm,
chinuch. You can't have your hands in different pots. If you're dedicating your life to raising talmidim, to raising students, that's got to be your whole life. And as soon as you put other stuff in the mix, it's gonna pull away from some of what you need to do with your talmidim. And So after a while, I realized, I wasn't preparing my shir the same way anymore. I was cutting corners, showing up a few minutes late here and there, and I needed to make a decision. It was a mature decision. I was at a crossroads. I said, okay, what do I want to do between the two? And I felt that although I was a dedicated Rebbe, and my students, some of them still keep up with me years later. I felt that I could reach more people through this medium, and I enjoyed it more. There were aspects of it that I enjoyed more.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I still needed to stay connected to learning. Being a Rebbe is a big machayev. It puts
Sure.
obligation on a person to keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
The last little while I do daf yomi, and that keeps me anchored and accountable.
Sure.
Baruch Hashem, we have a with a nice size shear.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I was with Eli Stefanski for Shabbos a couple of months ago. What
Mm-hmm.
they need to see him in Baba Basra. But I was joking with him. Eli's got 30,000 people. It's 6 times, but who cares? You have to pair the same shear.
Right. Sure. Sure. 100%. 100%. No, that's so true. Just thinking about all the videos you do, I know you've done videos on so many different topics, highlighting Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, and beyond. But tell us a little bit about how the whole Tisha B'Av phenomenon with Yoel Gold came about.
Right. So it came about um, simply by the suggestion of this Kalman. I give him the credit whenever I see him. He says, "Ready? Why did you take a bunch of your stories, put it into a film, and put it out for Tisha B'Av?" So I said, "I'll try it," and I did, and I saw that the feedback was unbelievable, and so we did it again. And the next year we did it even better. We upped our game. We invested more, and we doubled the numbers. And today I can honestly say, the past couple of years, we have over 1 million hits on the site in 25 hours. So it's
Wow.
it's watched in countries around the world, and
Wow.
I don't take it for granted. And so, but I felt that with every year, because so many people tune in, I have a responsibility. I feel a responsibility at this point to uplift people's stitch up in a very meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
Not just to give them fluff and stories, but every year I want to push to leave my audience with a feeling of going from mourning to yearning,
Mm-hmm.
like the mourning the Beis Hamikdash to yearning for it to be rebuilt. And
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't think I've ever done it as well as we're doing it this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely want to get to that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. For the first time, we're talking about the actual Churban Beis Hamikdash.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, one of the somewhat jokes, I guess you could say, that Rabban and pulpit rabbis get is that they tell people that on Shabbos you're supposed to be a day of rest, but the rabbis themselves, the day they work the most is on Shabbos. So I can't help but think a little bit of yourself. The day that you work the most is probably Tisha B'Av to some extent. And
No, not actually. That's totally. Yeah.
so my question is, on that day, how do you personally stay focused on the Chorban without wondering, like, was it 1 million hits yet? Not like, how do you stay focused on your own personal Tisha B'Av?
Right. It's a great question, and I've been struggling with that question, over the years, because Tisha B'Av I can barely focus on Eicha, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's just making sure that everything is running smoothly, and all the calls, the emails, and people need help, customer service, like
Uh-huh.
it's busy. And what I've come to really is, you know, we think of mourning, and there is a format that we were given to mourn on Tisha B'Av, to sit down on the floor on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe that there are various ways of expressing
Mm-hmm.
mourning. And to me, what I do on Tisha B'Av is not just mundane. To me, it's holy work,
Mm.
because I'm facilitating a feeling of mourning to yearning on Tisha B'Av that is very hard to access for many people.
Mm-hmm.
People actually feel guilty about not feeling guilty on Tisha B'Av, but not feel
Uh-huh.
the churban.
Uh-huh.
So I view the all the even the technical issues, I view it as an expression of my own mourning for Tisha B'Av. That is my mourning.
Hmm. Wherever you are, that's, a person sees their avodah, their work. And for everyone, Tisha B'Av, just like someone who runs an outreach minion on Yom Kippur, right? It's a different Yom Kippur, but
That's
that's
exactly right.
explaining, turning the pages here, pause, let me explain to you the paragraphs, translate. It's a different Yom Kippur, but that's their Yom Kippur.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly how I feel.
Now, okay, so let's dive in deep to the whole Tisha B'Av video, because I think one of the reasons, other than beyond the content that they've done so well, is how cool they are. The production, it's fast, cutting edge. It's, you're in Los Angeles, so maybe it's like Hollywood level. I mean, not that I really know Hollywood, but my question is more specifically, how do you think that comes across in terms of the idea of Kol HaMisabel V'Yerushalayim Zeichev B'nei Chamasai, that someone who has to be not just yearning, but like mourning, where like we're on the floor, right? You talked about the parameters. We're on the floor. We're supposed to be crying, to the extent that we can. And we do that personally when, a loved member, a family member passes. We don't make cool cutting edge videos for them. We just reflect the memories, and we try to keep it like more human to human, face to face, as opposed to the screen. So how do you, I don't know if this is intention from your standpoint, but how do you make sure that this is consistent with what traditionally has always been more of a yearning, that's, reading Eicha? There have been videos, but not necessarily to the extent that yours have been.
It's true. It's a really important question. And I want to preface my answer that this is really, if somebody can access the feelings of mourning and shed a tear simply by sitting down and reading the words of Eicha, then the film is not meant for them.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody can do that, um, then by all means save the film for after Tisha B'Av. It's still there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay, and you won't be missing out. You just wait a day, and a lot of people do that. Uh, but see, you just brought up an example about Kira and Yom Kippur, right?
Mhm.
If you go to the minyan there, it's a very different kind of minyan than the minyan we have in Yerushalayim in the Mir,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's a minyan that whoever leads it tries to find stories and bring the day to life in whatever way he can, and use whatever means is available that is still within the context of the day and doesn't. Yeah, so like to me, that's what I'm doing. I think that there's a tremendous need for the average person, and to really try to access those feelings, and it's not easy. It's really not easy. And so this is just a tool. It's just a tool. It's
Mhm.
just a means. It's not an end. It's a means to be able to get in touch with your neshama, with your soul, to feel the feelings of mourning, the yearning.
Yeah, no, that's tremendous. And you mentioned about how do you get that tear with that. You can't really force tears. You can't cut onions and rub it in your eyes. So how do you bring that out? So for different people, it's different things. I do want to quickly reference, I'm going to put you on the spot, but one that definitely brought a tear to my eye was about that couple during COVID in Neve Yaakov, who actually I'm mishpacha with, where they had that wedding and it was reported. Can I put you on the spot? Can you tell over that story?
Oh my gosh, you can totally put me on the spot, and I have some incredible follow-ups to that story.
Yeah, let's hear them all.
Okay, sure. So that particular story happened during COVID, when there were a lot of guidelines with weddings. You can only invite immediate family members. You have to wear masks. You have to keep social distancing. And there was this couple, if you want to watch it online at ashkifa.com, that got married, and they were pretty much adhering to all the guidelines. But in the middle of the wedding, cops showed up, and they had to go outside. You could see on the footage. I mean, it's all real. They had to go outside in the middle of their own wedding and try to appease the cops, tell them they're not really violating any of the guidelines, but the cops weren't listening. They slapped a 5,000 shekel fine on each of them. and they pretty much shut down the entire wedding. They couldn't even have a minyan for Sheva brachos at their own wedding. It literally was ruined. And she was devastated, by the way. The Kala was absolutely devastated. She couldn't get over it. It was before Yom Kippur. Their wedding was before Purim, so you're talking about around 6 months later. It was before Yom Kippur, and they received a call. And on the phone, there is a bacher, around 20, 22 years old, who says, you don't know me, but I walked past the building where you had your wedding around 6 months ago. And I was concerned about COVID and people contracting COVID. So I called the cops on you. I'm the one who called the cops. And I really want to ask for forgiveness. It's before Yom Kippur. The backstory of the bacher is he was in Shidduchim. He was dating, and he was the top guy getting all kinds of suggestions. And since he had made that called the cops on this couple and ruined their wedding, not one shidduch had been suggested in 6 months. And he felt that this was a shidduch ruining a wedding, so your own wedding. He felt it was like a measure for measure in the story, and he felt he had to call them up and ask for forgiveness. Long story short, they didn't say, we forgive you right away. They said, you're going to have to call us back tomorrow. We want to sleep on it. And, they really pushed hard. They said, Yom Kippur is coming, and we're about to ask God to forgive us. And why would he forgive us? If we forgive him, then we'd have more of a chance to be forgiven. And that's how they looked at it. And so when the guy called back the next day, they told him, we forgive you.
And then?
And that was it. After Yom Kippur, the Kala, the woman, she's driving her car and she gets into a massive accident. And the airbags pop out and, just like the car is total damaged. And they rush her to the hospital and she's totally okay. And not only that, the doctors said you must have had angels guarding over you because she was 6 months pregnant. And as the airbag popped out, it could have killed the fetus, could have killed the child. So the fact that you're okay, your baby's okay, is nothing short of a miracle. And when she told it to her father said, there's no doubt that it's because you forgave that person, that bacher, that you had that extra level, added measure of protection. So that's the story. So we put it out, and I get a couple of emails, and it just shows you the greatness of the Jewish people. It's just incredible because, I don't know who else would do this. I get an email the next year before Yom Kippur from a random guy in Chicago who prefers to remain anonymous. And he says, I watched your video and I feel that this bacher didn't do a proper tshuva. Because even though he asked for forgiveness, they had to pay a 5,000 shekel fine each.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, I want to offer to pay 10,000 shekel to this couple so that bacher could have a complete tshuva. Says, can you get me their account number? So I called them up. They couldn't believe it. And he did it.
Really?
Yeah, that was an incredible story. And it had some ripple effects.
When we think about Tisha B'Av, we may not be necessarily thinking about the whole mechila thing. Can you forgive me? That's something that we maybe mistakenly reserve for Yom Kippur. But I'm wondering if we could focus on that, because as Tisha B'Av, we're going to be dropping this before Tisha B'Av. Maybe that is something we should consider. How do we repair if it was the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam, for baseless hatred? Of course, we have to, fix that with avas chinam. Not that there's ever chinam, free love for no reason, but when it comes to the concept of teshuva and more specifically mechila, to forgive, we translate it as forgiveness. I'm just curious, what does that mean, forgive? Therefore what? I'm not going to be upset at you? What does that actually really mean?
it really means a recognition, to recognize clearly that whatever pain you experienced was decreed from heaven. And whoever did it to you was only, God's stick. It wasn't, this goes back to Ashgacha Prater,
Mhm.
the videos that I produced for years, um, uh, that, it's a realization that your soul needed to go through that experience, regardless of the person who did it. Now, it doesn't mean that the person who did it is absolved from any responsibility. There, at the same, two truths could be true at the same time.
Yeah.
And we, for some reason that many times we don't understand, we had to go through that pain. And at the same time, this person can also be held accountable and responsible for causing me that pain. And I'm not a philosopher, but I know that both are true.
You're right. No, that's a very important point. Okay, so now there are stories like that about the wedding in Neve Yaakov that, okay, you know what, that's gonna make headlines go viral. But there are other stories which I imagine you have to like grapple with. Is that a right story? Is that inspiring to me, or is it gonna be inspiring to the masses? Maybe I don't like it so much, but I know everyone else. Like, how do you gauge what's something? Because when you invest, you go, you talked about going all in, right? So I imagine it's the same thing about when you commit to a story. How do you know that this is actually be something that everyone's gonna fall in love with?
Right. So it's a great question. And first, right off the bat, I got to tell you, I don't hit 10 for 10. I'm not, not every story. Sometimes I'm surprised. I surprise myself. Sometimes there are stories that I believe is going to go absolutely viral and it doesn't. And sometimes there's a story that I don't think is going to go viral and it speaks to people in a very
Mhm.
deep way. So, um, how do I know? If a story moves me and if it moves me deeply, and sometimes it brings tears to my eyes, then I consider myself a regular person like you and somebody else. And I feel if it moved me, why wouldn't it move somebody else?
Mhm.
So uh, uh, stories are the language of the soul. So we all have souls, and if it touches one soul, it's going to touch another soul. It's going to touch anyone who listens to it. And it's just my responsibility is to tell it and to bring it to life in the best way possible.
And how do you gauge success? Like by hits, by numbers, by downloads, or by kind of, like the emails you got with the other store? How do you gauge success?
All right. So my ego wants to say success is if it changed somebody's life.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But
Straight
the
up.
truth is complex. The truth is complex. It's complex. So, sure, if it gets a lot of views, then I know it spoke to a lot of people, and to me, that's a level of success. But I think the older I get, the more I realize that the truth is, even if it doesn't get hundreds of thousands of views, if it does change one person, um, if it impacts one person, I think that there was a level of success there.
Mhm.
Um, would I have done it for one person? Probably not. Uh, so,
Two things can be true at once.
yeah, what did Winston Churchill say? How did he define success? He said, "Success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm."
Oh, wow.
So,
Never heard that one, but okay.
I don't hit every video is not an immediate success, but it's interesting because people tell me all the time. I ask them, What's your favorite video? What's your favorite story?" And everybody has a different one. Nobody has one that they say, "Oh, this is the one that is my favorite." There's nobody's maskim.
Mm.
Nobody agrees on one particular video, and the reason is because people, people have their own story. And when a person can see themselves in another
Uh-huh.
person's story,
Uh-huh.
that's what hits them. That's what goes deep.
Uh-huh.
That's what hits deep.
Identify
So
with it.
they identify with it. That's the word.
Yeah.
They identify with that story, and that's what speaks to them. So it depends so much. I always tell people, tell me what your favorite story is, and I'll tell you everything about you.
Interesting. Wow, that's deep. Wow. Okay, so now we're going to be approaching Tisha B'Av. Mirza Hashem, we won't have to, but in the event that we do, I know you have something coming up. Hidden Light in Search of Our Nation's Stolen Symbol. I know it dives into a stolen menorah. Can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek?
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to tell you that, up until this point, I did stories that are personal to one person or to a family or a community. What's unique about this film is it's your story, it's my story, it's everybody's story, it's our nation's story, it's the story of our people. And the film primarily retraces the steps of the menorah from the time it was taken out of the temple, out of the Beis Hamikdash, and uh, over to Rome. And we literally go to every stop that the menorah made from the time it arrived in Rome at Ostia Antica, the port of Ostia, up the Tiber River, paraded through the streets of Rome to the Temple of Peace, and we show you exactly where the menorah traveled, and the Klei HaMikdash, as it's depicted on the Arch of Titus, that was built 11 years after the menorah was brought to Rome. But so we start with history, just to tell you, give you a brief overview that how the menorah was definitely brought to Rome. But then we go into mystery because what happened was after a couple of hundred years, when the menorah was in the Temple of Peace, the Temple of Peace had a great fire, and eventually Rome was conquered by the Vandals, the Visigoths. It was sacked, and from that point on, the menorah disappeared, and we don't know what happened to it. So what this film brings to light, no pun intended, is that it's very, very possible. It brings to life the possibility that the menorah may very well be in the bowels of the Vatican today. And we give you facts, we give you testimonials, and we actually go into the Vatican. We go into catacombs, which is 4 levels deep underground in Rome, that is literally closed off to the public. You're able to get access. And it's just absolutely fascinating. And all the political efforts that have been made over the last 40 years to retrieve the menorah, and how close we got to the Vatican returning some of the treasures they definitely have in their basement.
Hmm. Uh, can't help but ask, where can people go watch it?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Go to hashkifa.com, HASHKIFA.com. It's going to be live. You can watch it from July 23rd. It's the week of the 9 days. You hear the 9 days? And yeah, don't miss it. Don't miss it. You will learn so much, and you'll learn about your history, and you'll leave feeling tremendously inspired.
Tremendous. Okay, you mentioned your Daf Yomi Mishir, and that takes me to my next segment. The Aguda, Agudath Israel of America, just announced, was it a couple weeks ago or so, the next Siyum Hashas, which is like, wow, it's been 7.5 years or close to. Hard to believe, that cold New Year's in MetLife Stadium. Hard to believe. And I know that you played a big role in the last one, and you even shared that story, people huddling around you in that packed stadium. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that experience was for you personally? You talk about how much it's like a mechayev, and the Daf Yomi obligates you a little bit or a lot to your personal growth. Tell us about that experience and what it's been for you since then.
Okay, so to be honest, okay, when I spoke in MetLife Stadium at the CMHS in 2020, I was not doing the DAF. And part of me felt really uncomfortable, speaking at the CMHS of, you know, worldwide, over 100,000 people, 90,000 people, plus so many people listening and watching from around the world. I felt like I shouldn't be the one inspiring and speaking, especially I was speaking about committing to doing the DAF in the next cycle.
Uh-huh.
And to be honest, I did commit at the time, but I fell off the bandwagon. And the reason why I fell off was because I didn't have the accountability factor of giving the shiur,
Mm-hmm.
accountability, which is the most important factor if you want to really commit to anything,
Yeah.
in a consistent way. The key word is accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started giving a shiur, then that's when I became accountable. But the experience of speaking in MetLife Stadium. So I speak publicly. I travel, and I've spoken probably hundreds and hundreds of times. But I was never as anxious and scared to speak in public as I was when I came to MetLife Stadium. Just the sheer volume of people, and just I was overcome with such awe and stage fright. I could barely hold the mic, and when I have a hard time watching myself speak there because I'm holding on to my notes, which I never do.
Yeah.
As I was speaking, one hand in the mic, one of the, and I remember I took the microphone, and I heard my own voice as I started speaking, and I was yelling because I wanted to project my voice.
Yeah.
90,000 people, and I didn't have to because the mic was so sensitive. You could just hear it, and like you could hear the echo. It was just a surreal experience. Uh, to speak in front of 90,000 Jews. It's a great memory. In my house, I have two photos. One is from the Siyum Hashas in 2012, the prior Siyum Hashas, where I was there with a group of guys doing kiruv, and one was me on the floor speaking to 90,000 people. I was like, wow, look where you can get to in 7 years.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, in our final segment, we're going to do a couple rapid fire questions. First off, a little bit on the more lighter side. I was asked by my Uncle Jim. He wants to know, when are you going to go on one of his epic runs?
Oh my gosh, Uncle Crystal Jim is the best. Let me just preface this. Your uncle, I absolutely love him. Very, very close friend of mine. I consider him a brother. He has tried desperately to get me to join him in his workouts. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, he had delivered to my house a mat. And he's been texting me saying, when can I come over to show you a couple of stretches and workouts? And I keep saying tomorrow.
Well, didn't you play a good game of basketball?
Yeah, no, I love basketball. So if I enjoy, I don't play basketball to work out. I play because I enjoy it. But I have a hard time, which I should do and I need to do. I have a hard time really dedicating some time just for the sake of working out, but seeing the important. So I'll tell you,
tomorrow.
well, Jim, yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, next. English art scroll, Hebrew art scroll, Shirley Bornstein, Eli Stefanski, or none of the above? Which?
Hebrew art school for sure. Hebrew art school is my go-to. I cannot do English. I can only do Hebrew, and I absolutely love it. I cannot listen to a shiur, just my own. I can't listen to a shiur when I prepare the daf. I have to learn it myself and I have to work through it. And I find the Hebrew art school most helpful to me.
Okay. A fun fact that no one would ever guess.
A fun fact that nobody would ever guess. Oh my. Fun fact that nobody would ever guess. I think you might have to skip this one too.
Oh, come on. You give us something. Give us something.
Oh man, a fun fact that nobody would ever guess. A fun fact that nobody would ever guess would be I love singing. I have a great voice, and I love playing guitar. And I'm a natural on the keyboard. Ever since I was young, as soon as I touched a keyboard, I was able to play by ear. Um, Part of me sometimes feels that maybe instead of speaking and storytelling, singing could have been a great career. People have told me to combine the two.
Yeah, I was about to suggest that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I have done it sometimes and it was very effective, very powerful, but I'm not known for that. So it's never too late.
As we wrap up, two things that stuck out to me from this interview was, if you're 99%, it's zero. You got to be all in. And, we could replicate that in many areas of life, and our relationships, and our Yiddishkeit, and our Judaism, and our Torah learning, wherever it is. And the second thing was that stuck out to me very much was the idea of your Tisha B'Av, your fulfilling Tisha B'Av is different than someone else's. And they're both, in every single, just like the rabbi and Yom Kippur. And I think that every single person, whether, in any one of the Taryag mitzvahs, the 613 mitzvahs, you're going to have that moment where you could this is not how I was supposed to fulfill the mitzvah, but no, this is your lane to fulfill the mitzvah. So those were two takeaways that I thought of.
Yeah.
Is there another takeaway, a third one that you want people to come away from this interview with?
I want people to, I just want to add to the second takeaway before I go to that third one.
Sure.
The second takeaway that you just said, I, you can't make up your own stuff in the name of this is how I connect with Hashem.
Good
You know,
catch.
it's a very, very delicate balance. You know, some people say,
Sure.
but I go on a drive on Shabbos. That's how I connect to Hashem.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to be mindful and careful with this kind of concept. But when it comes to mourning, we all have our own ways of mourning, and so that's even though there are halachas and there are protocols, but as long as you're not violating anything, absolutely be free in your expression. Yeah, in the sense of what my takeaway would be the film. The way I've been working 8 months with our director Paul Greenberg, our producer Maishi Bree, and it takes a village to produce this film. It's so many people really. But what I learned from this process of producing this film is that being in the Vatican was extremely difficult for me because it was a foreign place to me.
Mm-hmm.
Even just walking around the museums and some of the catacombs, very foreign, and sometimes I felt out of place. And yet, when I walked away from Rome, I walked away uplifted and light. And the whole purpose of the film, really, the takeaway is to show people that even in the darkest places, you can find light. And that's that's really the message that I want people to walk away with on Tisha B'Av, that you can sit on Tisha B'Av in the darkness, but Hashem Orli, there is light in every darkness. And in the end, we didn't find the Menorah. We don't see the Menorah, so I'm ruining the film. But you do find something much more important than the Menorah. We found the light of the Menorah, and if you watch it, I think you'll agree with me.
Wow. Beautiful. What a tribute. And thank you for coming on. Everyone, hashkifa.com, right? Not .org.com, right?
.com.
.com.
It's an honor to sit with you and schmooze with you and talk. Rabbi Hill, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you. B'hatzlacha, Rabbi.
Amen. Amen.
To listen to all Kolot episodes and see upcoming guests, visit kolotpodcast.com. We are also on all podcast players. Type in Kolot on iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, and Amazon. Share with your friends and please make sure to give us a 5-star review. Kolot is a project of the Columbus Community Kollel, a full-time Jewish learning center in Bexley, staffed with high-caliber Torah scholars. Ever since 1995, boys, girls, men, and women from all backgrounds and affiliations have found many opportunities to connect with Torah and mitzvos at the Kollel. Whether it's a study partner, an engaging lesson, or a program, the Kollel is your one-stop shop for all your Jewish learning. If you want to know how you can benefit from the Kollel, visit thekollel.org. That is TheKollel.org, and forever be inspired.